This is a comparison that I thought would be pretty interesting. Both of these phones are at either end of the spectrum when it comes to price, with the iPhone SE coming in at $399 and the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus coming in at $999. But Apple have always had a reputation for having good cameras on their phones, and so I thought I'd compare these two in terms of their photo and video capabilities, and I was surprised at how close they were. By the way, if you're going to enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe. These videos take an age to make, so it'd be much appreciated. So first, let's look at some general photos. You're going to notice a pattern here with the differences between the two cameras. The greens in this shot are slightly different, with the Samsung being more vibrant and the iPhone having more realistic tones. And if you look closely at the shadows, the iPhone brings them up to be brighter. This introduces more noise. I did get mixed results with these shots, however. In this shot, again, the iPhone makes the colours slightly more realistic. This time the shadows, particularly in this tree, are brighter on the Samsung. The detail is very similar, with not much difference between the two unless you really pixel peep, where the Samsung comes out better due to that newer sensor. Also, pay attention to the difference in the sky. The iPhone shows more realistic grey in the clouds, whereas the Samsung chooses to lighten the colour a bit, which changes the mood of the image completely. Here's a couple of closer shots of these flowers, and the Samsung again comes out more vibrant, which complements a shot like this well. There's also slightly more details in the in-focus areas on the Samsung. This is a good time to point out that normally I'd say iPhone users could go in and increase the vibrancy of their images in editing to match that of the Samsung. But not everyone buying a $400 phone wants to go in and edit their photos. But at the same time, some might prefer the more vibrant image. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Note the huge difference in the sky between these two photos. To my eye, there was little to no blue in the sky whatsoever. So I believe that the iPhone took the more realistic shot. But I think most people would prefer the more vibrant Samsung photo, even though it's not necessarily the most realistic. The same is true in this photo, where the sky has been made to look blue, despite it being fully overcast at this point. But still, the Samsung is slightly sharper if you were to look up close, and again in this shot of the building. In this close-up, both phones took a different approach, with the iPhone brightening the exposure but keeping the colours realistic, and Samsung instead flattening the exposure to keep the detail in the whites, but making everything a bit more vibrant. I think it's really personal preference at this point. Talking of preference, which camera do you think is performing best so far? Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this. Interestingly, in this shot, the iPhone leaves the sky overexposed, whereas the HDR on the Samsung kicks in and brings back the detail in the sky. A much better performance from the Samsung in my opinion, even if the exposure on the flowers is slightly darker. That's in contrast to this shot, where the iPhone manages to keep some detail in the sunlit area here, whereas Samsung just leaves it overexposed. In some shots though, there's barely a difference between the cameras. The iPhone is holding up really well, although for shots like this, I really did miss having that ultra wide from the Samsung. I have to admit that since I've started using phones with wide angle cameras, I use them at least half of the time. It offers a different perspective to the focal length we're used to seeing on phones, which gives less of a phone photo feel and also makes the photo feel more dramatic. The iPhone also lacks a telephoto camera, which has also become standard on modern phones. And although the digital zoom is acceptable, it's nowhere near as good as a standalone telephoto, like the 3x telephoto on the Samsung. Video is where things get really interesting, and perhaps the tables turn. I really don't like the 4K video on the Samsung. It's incredibly over-sharpened for some reason, and it just looks messy. iPhone is well known for best-in-class video, and the SE, despite being a lot cheaper than their flagships, is no exception. The iPhone video at 4K 60 looks fantastic. Both phones have really great stabilisation, and it's difficult to tell the difference between the two. But again, in these shots, it's really obvious to me that the iPhone is leagues above in quality. You may have to take my word for it due to YouTube compression. Looking at these following shots, if I had to choose a winner for stabilisation, it would definitely have to be the iPhone. Exposure-wise, both phones are doing really well in all tests, and even when pointing at the sun, they both handle exposing me well here. They also handle exposure changes very well, even in difficult circumstances, and in this shot you can't fault either phone. Overall, both phones perform well in 4K, with stabilisation looking awesome, and both cameras expose them well for shadows and highlights. I can't emphasise enough though, if 4K video is important to you, the S20 is not the phone to get, and the iPhone has incredible 4K video. Where the S20 Plus redeems itself though, is its secret weapon, the 8K video. Now, I've already made a video detailing whether the Samsung Galaxy S20's 8K video is actually worth it, and I'll leave a link below in the description. So check that out and leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Moving now to the front camera. Photos from both phones are really good, but in this shot, the iPhone exposes my face much better by bringing up those shadows. But the Samsung has another ace up its sleeve here, and that's the slightly wider lens on the front camera, allowing you to zoom out and capture a bit extra, which is perfect for group selfies or just to get a bit more of the background in your shot. Portraits are awesome with the selfie camera on both cameras. iPhones are known for their great portrait mode, but I can't see a huge difference for the most part. Portraits with the back camera are a different story. With the Samsung, you can kind of step back and still get a nice portrait shot with a blurred background, but iPhone struggled even at this distance and just gave me a normal photo. So you do have to get a bit closer with the iPhone if you want a portrait photo. Samsung's live focus can also detect objects to isolate them from the background, which is a really cool effect, even if it misses a little at times. The iPhone SE is not able to do that. And finally, in this portrait shot of me, stood in the shade with the sun behind me, in order to raise those shadows, the iPhone casts a kind of blue tint on the image, whereas the Galaxy S20 handles it pretty well. Night mode is non-existent on iPhone, but it's come a long way on the Samsung. In this dimly lit photo indoors, you can see the Samsung's night mode brightening and sharpening the image just enough, whereas the iPhone is a tad noisy, but not terrible. Outside though, the Samsung is leagues above it in its night photos, with the lights of the cruise ship and the darks of the night sky being balanced relatively well. The iPhone tones this down and doesn't do too badly with arguably the more realistic image, but I'd much rather have more detail and make the image darker later. The night video is very different on each of them, with the Samsung brightening the night sky and the iPhone coming out pretty much unusable. Potentially the iPhone has a low maximum ISO, and that's why it's not even trying to brighten the exposure up. In these photos, again, the Samsung produces a bright and sharp image, preserving details in the sky and on the buildings, with the sky in this photo being much noisier on the iPhone. The iPhone has an older sensor, so I guess Apple didn't think it was worthy of night mode, but with all that processing power in the A13 chip, I can't help but think they could have tried. So what did you think of the cameras on these two phones? Does the difference in camera quality reflect the price difference, or do you think the iPhone SE holds up in 2020? If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, it'd be much appreciated, as these videos do take so long to make. If you want to see more content like this, please do subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.